What if I told you the most dangerous person in the room isn't the workaholic, the overachiever, or even the genius? It isn't the person with the most followers, the most credentials, or the most hours logged at the office. It's the person everyone quietly calls lazy, the one who never seems to be in a rush, the one who dreams bigger than everyone else but doesn't look like he's doing anything about it. He doesn't compete in your rat race. He doesn't perform his productivity. And somehow, he still ends up seeing possibilities no one else can. This is the person Carl Jung spent his life trying to understand. And if you really think about it, this is the person you might secretly fear the most, because if he's right, then everything you've been taught about success is wrong. Picture this. You walk into a coffee shop and see two people sitting. Across the room, at one table, there's Sarah, laptop open, planner full of color-coded tasks, typing furiously between sips of her oat milk latte. She looks productive, focused, like she's building something important. At the other table, there's Mike. Mike's half slouched in his chair, phone in hand, staring out the window like he's not even awake yet. His notebook is closed. He hasn't written a single thing in an hour. If I asked you which one of them you'd bet on to change the world, you'd probably pick Sarah. She looks the part. She looks like she's working hard, like she's earning her future one keystroke at a time. But what if I told you Mike is the one with an idea that could revolutionize transportation? What if I told you Mike is sitting there thinking through a problem that Sarah doesn't even know exists? And what if I told you Sarah, for all her effort and meticulous planning, is just updating her LinkedIn profile? The truth is, we're wired to admire Sarah because she confirms everything we've been taught about what success should look like. We're taught that busyness is a virtue, that action is proof of ambition, that waking up at 5 a.m. and grinding until midnight is how you earn respect and eventually your dream life. And so when we see someone like Mike's, someone who looks like he's doing nothing, we judge him. We call him lazy. We think he's wasting his potential. We think he's falling behind. But Carl Jung saw something else entirely. Jung believed that people like Mike weren't lazy at all. They were operating from an entirely different level of consciousness. They weren't running in circles trying to keep up with the world. They were stepping back from the circle entirely and seeing the game from above. And that perspective terrified people. Because if someone could have great ideas without forcing themselves through endless workdays, if someone could be brilliant without performing busyness, then what does that say about the exhausting race the rest of us have been running? Here's the uncomfortable truth. We fear the lazy, ambitious man not because he's lazy, but because he threatens our belief system. He's living proof that maybe we've been doing success wrong this whole time. He is the living contradiction that forces us to question why we measure our worth in hours worked, why we celebrate burnout as a badge of honor, why we obsess over optimizing every second of our lives when he seems to thrive without doing any of it. This is why he makes you uncomfortable, because if he's right, then you might have spent years sacrificing your peace of mind for nothing. Jung once wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Think about that for a second. What irritates you about the lazy, ambitious man? Is it that he's not sacrificing his present for some distant future? Is it that he's not running on the same anxious treadmill you are? Is it that he's not pretending to be busy just to feel worthy? Because if that's what irritates you, it means you've built your identity on those very sacrifices. It means you've been conditioned to believe that if you ever stopped hustling, stopped pushing, stopped proving your worth through motion, you'd lose everything that makes you valuable. And that's exactly why this person scares you. He's not just lazy, he's free. Jung spent his life exploring the parts of ourselves we'd rather not face. He called it the shadow, the side of us that holds everything we fear, repress, or deny. And in our culture, one of the biggest shadows is the fear of being seen as lazy, worthless, or unproductive. This is why we perform productivity even when it's killing us. This is why we optimize our morning routine until it becomes a second job. This is why we hustle and grind and brag about it online. Not because it's truly working for us, but because we're terrified of what would happen if we stopped. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not because it made you money. Not because it moved you closer to a goal. Not because it would look good on social media. Just because it felt good in the moment. If you can't, remember, you're not alone. Most people can't. We've been taught that our worth is tied to output. That any moment not spent being productive is a moment wasted. The lazy, ambitious man doesn't play that game. And that's what makes him dangerous. He isn't trying to prove his worth through motion. He isn't pretending to be busy. He isn't performing ambition to make you comfortable. And here's the part that really breaks people's brains. He still has better ideas than most of the people, running around with their hair on fire. Einstein didn't come up with the theory of relativity by filling every hour of his schedule. Tesla didn't invent by sitting in back-to-back meetings. Jung himself had some of his biggest breakthroughs during periods that looked suspiciously like idleness to everyone else. He understood something that most people never learn. The unconscious mind is infinitely more creative than the conscious, effortful mind. While you're forcing yourself through another productivity hack, he's letting his unconscious work in the background, connecting dots you can't even see. And this is where it gets even more interesting. Jung called this process active imagination. It's what happens when your conscious mind steps back and lets your unconscious present its insights. But here's the thing. This process can't be forced. You can't put it on a calendar. You can't schedule inspiration. It comes when it comes. And that's exactly why society fears the lazy, ambitious man, because he's tapped into a kind of power that can't be controlled, can't be optimized, can't be turned into a 5-step system. He is playing a longer, slower, deeper game, and there's something almost rebellious about that. Our entire culture depends on compliance. You go to school for 16 years to learn how to follow instructions. You get a job where you trade hours for money. You buy things to signal your status. You spend your free time optimizing yourself so you can get back to work refreshed and productive. But the lazy, ambitious man isn't doing any of that. He's ignoring the whole system. He's asking questions like, why am I even playing this game? Who decided these were the rules? And nobody has a good answer. That's what makes him dangerous. He's unpredictable. You can't control someone who doesn't care about the awards you're offering or the punishments you're threatening. The lazy, ambitious man has dreams without desperation, ambition without anxiety, and this unsettles everyone who has been taught that suffering is the price of success. Because if he's right, then millions of people have been burning themselves out for no reason. They've been sacrificing their mental health, their relationships, their happiness for a system that was never designed to make them happy in the first place. Jung saw this clearly. He believed that the individual has always had to struggle, not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. But this person isn't even struggling against the tribe. He's walking away from it. And that terrifies the tribe, because if enough people follow him, the entire system stops working. But here's the part that hits hardest. What if this man is right about you? What if you are one of these people and you've been forcing yourself to live like Sarah when you were meant to live like Mike? What if your resistance to traditional productivity isn't laziness, but intuition? What if your inability to wake up at 5 a.m. isn't a flaw, but a clue? What if the reason you feel guilty for resting is because you've been trained to believe that rest is wrong, when in reality, it's the only way you can access your best ideas? This is the question that keeps people up at night, because deep down, many of us suspect that the lazy, ambitious man might be onto something. Jung himself was one of them. He spent years in what looked like unproductive solitude, filling journals with strange visions, exploring his own psyche, following threads of thought that seemed meaningless to the outside world. His colleagues thought he was wasting his potential. The academic world called him mystical and impractical. But from that so-called laziness came ideas that completely reshaped psychology, the collective unconscious, archetypes, the shadow, personality types, concepts we now take for granted as foundational. His apparent idleness was actually incubation. He was letting his unconscious do the work that conscious effort never could. And that's exactly what the lazy, ambitious man is doing today. The truth is, every lazy, ambitious man in history has gone through that same crucible Jung went through. Years of being misunderstood, years of being labeled as wasted potential, years of feeling like something was wrong with them because they couldn't fit into society's tempo. But here's the thing, those years weren't wasted. They were necessary. They were preparation. They were quiet incubators for ideas that would one day erupt into something undeniable. That's the secret. Nobody tells you about this way of living. When you stop trying to compete with the visible hustle of the world, and instead let your own rhythm lead you, your life stops being a race and starts being a masterpiece that takes shape over time. Think about it. Every single system you interact with, from school to corporate culture to social media conditions, you too think in terms of constant motion and instant output. You're told to get good grades as quickly as possible, get a degree as quickly as possible, climb the ladder as quickly as possible. Even your hobbies are supposed to be monetized. Your free time is supposed to be productive, and if it isn't, you feel guilty. But the lazy, ambitious man doesn't feel that guilt. Not because he's careless, but because he's listening to something deeper. He trusts the timing of his mind. He allows long, empty, quiet stretches where nothing seems to be happening, because he knows something is happening beneath the surface. That's what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. It doesn't happen on a schedule. It doesn't happen because you set a goal to become yourself by Q4. It happens in moments of stillness, of silence, of staring at the ceiling, wondering what your life is supposed to mean. And yes, it happens in moments that other people call lazy. But the irony is that those moments, the ones you're most ashamed of, might be the most important moments of your life. Because in those moments, your unconscious mind is making connections. Your conscious mind is too noisy to notice. This is why the lazy, ambitious man is dangerous to society, not because he's failing, but because he's succeeding on his own terms. He doesn't measure his life by how many hours he's worked or how many boxes he's ticked off his to-do list. He measures it by something deeper: insight, alignment, readiness. And when his moment comes, when all those years of incubation crystallize into clarity, he moves with a force that startles everyone who doubted him. It's almost eerie how this plays out across history. People who looked like they were wasting their time suddenly unleash ideas that shift entire civilizations. Einstein daydreams and gives us relativity. Jung isolates himself and gives us a map of the human psyche. Writers, inventors, philosophers, artists, all accused of laziness at some point, suddenly produce works that last for centuries. This is the rhythm of the lazy, ambitious man. Long winters of apparent inactivity, followed by sudden, almost violent springs of creation. And here's what nobody wants to admit. Deep down, you might crave that rhythm too. You might be tired of living like Sarah, tired of keeping up with a productivity culture that never lets you rest, tired of proving your worth through performance. Part of you wants to slow down, part of you wants to trust yourself, but that part of you scares you, because if you stop running, won't you fall behind? If you stop grinding, won't your dreams die? That's the fear that keeps you locked in a cycle of exhaustion. And that's exactly why seeing someone like Mike triggers you so deeply. Because he's living the life you secretly wish you could. He's trusting the very instincts you've been trained to ignore. Jung would say, that's your shadow speaking. That irritation you feel when you see someone not working as hard as you, but still coming up with brilliant ideas, that's a clue. It's not about them, it's about you. It's about the parts of yourself you've been denying. The parts that want to play, rest, wonder, experiment, explore without a clear goal. And until you face those parts, you'll keep projecting your frustration outward. You'll keep resenting the people who seem free because they remind you of what you've lost. But here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. You can reclaim that freedom. You can stop performing productivity and start living your life as if your worth wasn't tied to output. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. Your ambition doesn't die, it deepens. It becomes quieter, steadier, more powerful. Instead of chasing validation, you start building things that actually matter to you. Instead of burning yourself out trying to keep pace with a world that's sprinting nowhere, you start walking your own path at your own speed. And you discover that your path takes you places no sprint ever could. This is what Jung meant when he said, your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Most people never awaken. They spend their whole lives looking outside at what society tells them to want, at what their parents expect of them, at what Instagram tells them is impressive. But the lazy, ambitious man has already turned inward. He's already begun the awakening process. And that's why his life feels so different. That's why he's not panicking the way everyone else is. He's seen something they haven't. He's tasted the freedom that comes from trusting yourself completely, even when the world thinks you're doing nothing. The question is, are you willing to do the same? Are you willing to risk being misunderstood, labeled lazy, judged, underestimated, in order to honor your own rhythm? Because that's the price. You can't have this kind of freedom without first being willing to let go of other people's approval. You can't wait for the world to understand you before you start trusting yourself. Jung didn't wait. He walked away from the most prestigious academic circles of his time because he knew that his real work required solitude. He knew that the answers he was seeking couldn't be found in someone else's system. They had to be found in his own depths, and that's where the real transformation happens. When you stop trying to force yourself into someone else's timeline and start allowing your own timing to guide you. Your ambitions might not look productive to other people right now. You might need years of wandering before your vision comes together. You might look like you're doing nothing while your peers are achieving one milestone after another. But when your moment comes, and it will all make sense. All those years of apparent laziness will suddenly reveal themselves as preparation. Every day you spent resting, thinking, dreaming, incubating will have been exactly what you needed to create something no one else could create. Society fears this because it can't control it. Productivity culture is built on predictability. It wants to measure your output, track your hours, quantify your contribution. The lazy, ambitious man breaks that model. He can't be managed by metrics. His breakthroughs come when they come, and no boss, no system, no deadline can change that. And this is why, historically, these people are ridiculed till they're not. Until they produce something so undeniable that everyone suddenly pretends they always believed in them. That's the bittersweet part. You might be mocked now, but if you stay true to your rhythm, one day the same people who called you lazy will call you a visionary. That day will feel quiet. It won't come with fanfare. It won't feel like a movie climax. It will feel inevitable, like something that was always waiting for you. The conditions will line up. The idea you've been incubating will become clear. The action will feel effortless. And when that happens, all the years you spent feeling broken will reveal themselves as the very thing that made you whole. You are not broken. You are not falling behind. You are not lazy in the way society defines laziness. You are simply playing a different game at a different speed with a different set of rules. And maybe that's what the world needs right now. People who refuse to burn out. People who refuse to trade their peace of mind for a place on someone else's leaderboard. People who are willing to trust they're unconscious enough to let the world think they're doing nothing until the day they change everything. So maybe the question isn't, why is society afraid of the lazy, ambitious man? Maybe the real question is, are you willing to be one? Because if you are, you might just discover that your so-called laziness was never laziness at all. It was the rhythm of creation calling you. And the moment you trust it, the moment you stop apologizing for it, you stop being society's problem and start being society's possibility. And that is exactly what they fear the most.